You really think you belong here?
Marcus, don't do this here.
He knows exactly what I am talking about.
I am finished with this.
There are moments in life when silence hurts more than insults. And then there are moments when the people who once walked away from you return, not to apologize, but to laugh at the person they think you still are. What happened to me on a bright Saturday afternoon at my old high school's reunion was one of those moments. My ex-wife looked me up and down, smiled with unmistakable arrogance, and mocked everything she believed I had become. She had no idea that while everyone saw an ordinary man in a simple shirt, I had quietly built one of the largest technology companies in the country. But this is not a story about revenge. It is a story about heartbreak, patience, dignity, and the incredible way life rewards those who refuse to give up. Before we begin, if you believe kindness is never wasted and that everyone deserves a second chance, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to the channel. Kindness Echo. Your support helps us bring more heartfelt stories to life. 8 years earlier, my world had fallen apart in a tiny apartment where every dream seemed too expensive to keep alive. My name is Adrian Mercer, and back then, I wasn't successful or admired. I was simply a hard-working engineer with impossible dreams and empty pockets. Every morning I left before sunrise, worked long hours, and returned home exhausted, believing that persistence would eventually change our lives. My wife, Vanessa Holloway, had once believed in those dreams too. During our college years, we had promised each other that love was enough. We laughed over instant noodles, celebrated tiny victories, and imagined growing old together. But adulthood has a cruel way of testing promises made in youth. Bills piled up faster than paychecks. My startup ideas failed one after another. Investors rejected me without even reading my proposals. Friends who once cheered for me slowly disappeared from my life. Every failure became another argument at home. Vanessa's disappointment grew louder than her love. She began comparing me to former classmates who had luxury cars, beautiful homes, and glamorous vacations. I could see the hope fading from her eyes each day, and no matter how hard I worked, I couldn't bring it back. The divorce happened quietly but left wounds that echoed for years. There were no dramatic scenes in court, only cold signatures and empty words. Before leaving, Vanessa looked at me with pity instead of anger, and somehow that hurt even more. She believed I would always remain a man full of dreams, but empty of success. Watching her close the apartment door behind her felt like watching every plan I had ever made disappear into darkness. For months after the divorce, life became painfully lonely. I rented a tiny room above an old grocery store. The ceiling leaked whenever it rained, and the heater barely worked during winter. Some evenings I skipped dinner because I needed every dollar to keep experimenting with my software project. I often questioned whether I was chasing a fantasy. There were nights when I stared at my laptop until sunrise, wondering if the world was trying to tell me to quit. But something inside me refused to surrender. Every rejection taught me something new. Every failure forced me to improve. While others slept, I learned new programming languages, studied business strategies, and read biographies of entrepreneurs who had once stood exactly where I stood. I stopped chasing quick success and focused on creating something that genuinely solved people's problems. Instead of complaining about closed doors, I quietly built my own. Years passed without anyone noticing. Slowly, the impossible became possible. My software platform helped hospitals organize patient records more efficiently. A regional healthcare network adopted it first. Then another. Then another. Investors who had once ignored me suddenly wanted meetings. Partnerships expanded across the country. Within 5 years, my company had grown into an international technology enterprise employing thousands of people. Newspapers called me a visionary entrepreneur. Financial magazines estimated my wealth in the billions. Yet I rarely gave interviews. I preferred living quietly, wearing ordinary clothes, and remembering the difficult years that had shaped my character. Despite everything I had achieved, one invitation remained untouched on my kitchen table for nearly 2 weeks. It was for our high school reunion. At first, I had no intention of attending. I wasn't interested in proving anything to anyone. But then, I remembered the teachers who had believed in me long before success arrived. I wanted to thank them. So on a sunny Saturday morning, I drove myself in a modest sedan instead of one of the luxury vehicles sitting in my garage. I wore a simple blue shirt, comfortable shoes, and an inexpensive watch that had belonged to my late father. Nothing about my appearance suggested wealth. Walking through the school gates felt like stepping into another lifetime. The basketball court was smaller than I remembered. The old oak tree still stood proudly in the center of the campus. Familiar laughter echoed through the hallways as former classmates hugged each other and exchanged stories about careers, marriages, and children. For a while, everything felt warm and nostalgic. Then I saw Vanessa. She looked elegant, confident, and surrounded by people. Designer clothes, expensive jewelry, and a smile polished by years of social status made her the center of attention. When her eyes landed on me, surprise quickly turned into amusement. She slowly approached with the confidence of someone certain she had made the right choices in life. Without asking about my happiness or health, she measured me with a quick glance and seemed satisfied with her conclusion. My ordinary clothes convinced her that nothing had changed. She casually remarked that I still looked exactly like someone who had never figured life out. She spoke about luxury vacations, exclusive neighborhoods, and the wealthy businessman she had married after our divorce. Several classmates nearby smiled awkwardly, unsure whether to interrupt. I simply listened. There was a time when those words would have crushed me. 8 years earlier, I might have defended myself or tried desperately to explain my struggles. But pain had matured into peace. I no longer needed strangers to validate my worth. Throughout the afternoon, I greeted old teachers, laughed with forgotten friends, and shared memories from our school days. Many people assumed I was living an average life because I never mentioned my business. Ironically, it was the first time in years I felt completely free from the pressure of impressing anyone. Later, the reunion organizer invited everyone into the auditorium for a special presentation celebrating graduates who had made significant contributions to society. Classmates whispered excitedly, guessing which successful doctors, athletes, or politicians would receive recognition. The principal stepped onto the stage with a warm smile and thanked everyone for returning home. Then he announced that the school had recently received the largest private donation in its history. The funds would build scholarships, modern science laboratories, a technology innovation center, and free educational programs for underprivileged students. Students from struggling families would finally have opportunities that many of us never had. The audience burst into applause before anyone even knew who the donor was. The principal paused dramatically before saying my name. For a few seconds, absolute silence filled the room. Every face slowly turned toward me. Vanessa's confident smile disappeared instantly. The principal invited me to the stage, explaining how my company had transformed healthcare technology and how I had quietly donated hundreds of millions of dollars to improve educational opportunities across the country. He emphasized that I had requested complete anonymity because I believed kindness should never depend on recognition. As I walked toward the stage, I noticed expressions changing everywhere. People who had barely acknowledged me now stared in disbelief. Teachers wiped tears from their eyes. Former classmates applauded with genuine admiration. Yet the only emotion I truly felt was gratitude. Standing behind the microphone, I looked around the auditorium where my dreams had first begun. I spoke not about wealth but about failure. I told everyone that success is rarely born from talent alone. It grows from rejection, loneliness, patience, and the courage to continue when nobody believes in you. I thanked every teacher who had encouraged a shy student with impossible ambitions. I reminded everyone that kindness costs nothing but can completely change another person's future. When the ceremony ended, many classmates approached to congratulate me. Some apologized for losing touch. Others shared stories of their own struggles. Success had unexpectedly created honest conversations that pride never could. Vanessa waited quietly near the exit. The confidence that had surrounded her earlier had vanished. Her eyes reflected regret rather than superiority. Without saying much, she admitted through tears that she had judged my value by temporary circumstances instead of character. She confessed that her second marriage had been built on appearances rather than love and had already collapsed. Wealth had never given her the peace she expected. Listening to her, I realized something surprising. I wasn't angry anymore. Time had healed wounds I once believed would never close. Forgiveness had quietly replaced bitterness long before that reunion. I wished her happiness with complete sincerity. Not because she deserved it more than anyone else, but because carrying resentment would only imprison my own heart. As the sun began setting over the old school building, I took one final walk through the empty courtyard. Children would soon fill these halls again, dreaming dreams as impossible as mine once seemed. Some would come from families struggling to pay bills. Others would feel invisible or underestimated. I hoped the scholarships would remind them that where they begin does not determine where they finish. Driving home, I reflected on everything life had taught me. The greatest victory wasn't becoming a billionaire. It wasn't standing on stage while people applauded. It wasn't watching someone who underestimated me realize they had been wrong. The greatest victory was becoming the kind of man who could face his past without hatred and his future without fear. Money can build companies, buy houses, and change lifestyles, but only character can build a meaningful life. The world often celebrates those who rise quickly, yet it rarely sees the years of sacrifice hidden beneath success. Every sleepless night, every rejection, every lonely meal, every painful goodbye had quietly prepared me for the blessings that eventually arrived. If someone has ever underestimated you, abandoned you during difficult times, or laughed at your dreams, remember this story. Don't waste your energy proving them wrong. Spend your energy becoming the best version of yourself. Let your actions speak louder than your arguments. Let your kindness outlive your pain. One day, the life you build will become the answer you never needed to say aloud. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, share it with your family and friends, subscribe to Kindness Echo, and let us know your thoughts in the comments. Your support inspires us to continue sharing stories that remind the world that kindness, hope, and perseverance still matter,